Clothing started to really bother me for some reason too. And this started when I got older, around first grade. For some reason, clothes didn't bother me so much when I was younger, but it started to really bother me when I was 7. Shirts with buttons and pants with pockets bothered me the most. Whenever I wore pants with pockets, I used to pull them inside out. The kids at school thought it was cool though. The pockets would hang right out of my pants. Whenever I wore clothes that bothered me, I used to tug, chew, and throw fits. My parents tried to force me to get used to the clothes that bothered me, but I continued to struggle when wearing them. I used to chew my shirt, chew the buttons. I used to tug my pants so hard that it would look like I was almost crazy. My second grade teacher felt bad about how clothes bothered me and had to talk to my parents. My parents eventually decided not to let me wear clothes that didn't bother me. So for the next 4 years, I only wore white t-shirts, certain Mario shirts, and sweatpants. I was so happy and relieved. I started getting interested in pipes. I got interested in pipes around 2nd grade because I used to hear the water go down the pipes when I used to play in my dad's basement. When someone would flush the toilet, 2 minutes later, you suddenly could hear water running down this one section of pipe in the basement. I thought it was fascinating. I started flushing the toilet repeatedly and running down the basement to hear the water go down the pipes. I used to press my ear right against the pipe and hear the water trickle louder and louder and louder in the distance as it approached down the pipes to the area that I was listening at. I found it so fascinating. My mom lived near a construction site, and I found out they had a lot of pipes on the site for construction work. I used to walk over to the construction next door and steal the pipes. I used to take the pipes and build networks of piping around the house and then run water through it with a hose. As the construction workers drove by the house in their trucks, they would see an elaborate construction of network of pipes on my front lawn. I also started getting interested in boiler rooms and furnaces around that time. This was when I was going into 2nd grade again. The boiler room at my school that used to scare me soon became a fascination. After school, I often peeked through the window to look at the furnace and the amazing network of piping in the boiler room. There were times I tried to actually walk into the boiler room, but the janitor caught me. I started getting obsessed with the boiler rooms and furnaces in general. I used to draw lots of pictures of furnaces, and they looked really good. I used to draw them with complete detail. I drew the boiler, I drew elaborate networks of pipes. I used to draw all the valves in the motors, in the wires, but mostly pipes everywhere. My drawing skills started to get better at that time. I started using shading. I started understanding lighting and shadows. And when I drew boilers, I used to shade everything and draw shadows along the pipes. I begged my mom to buy me duct pipes from the hardware store so I could build my own pretend boiler room in the garage. One time I caused a whole basement to flood in the middle of the night one time because I took a duct pipe off a heater in the basement. I slid it right off a heating element that was on the ceiling. The temperature dropped to the negatives one night and cold air blew into the basement, making a water pipe freeze and burst. I built a prototype boiler room in my garage using a large box and a bunch of duct pipe from the hardware store that I had, and also that I took from the construction site next door. It looked really close to an actual boiler room. It looked very much like a boiler room that I used to ride my bike to and look at behind a bowling alley. I used to get jealous and hate everybody at my school who claimed to have a big furnace in their basement. I used to ask people if they had big furnaces in their basement, and often unaware what a furnace was or anything, they would say yes. And I took it literally and got jealous. I used to look into the basement windows of just about every person's house in the town. I literally did. I knew what every furnace and what the pipes looked like in pretty much everybody's basement. Looking into people's basement often involved running into people's backyards. I remembered what every furnace looked like. Heating systems using duct pipes were my favorite. I am surprised to this day that I never got caught by anyone when I entered their yards. I felt like my interest in furnaces really made this year exciting. Whenever I went to a store, I always enjoyed looking at the duct pipes and wondering what the furnaces looked like. This made an ordinary shopping trip that would otherwise be boring exciting. Sometimes when I went at a store, I would try to sneak through the double doors in the back of the store and peek into the warehouse section to see if I could see the boiler room and to also look at the duct pipes. I was never successful in finding the boiler room. The fact that I never saw any boiler rooms only kept my curiosity going. I often asked my mom questions about God and heaven. I knew that heaven was a wonderful place, and I believed we could use free will more and learn to create and experience whatever you wanted. That sounded a lot of fun to me, and I was often excited to go there, and that living life for all these years before it was time to go to heaven was a long time. I couldn't wait to go to heaven because I knew it was a good place. However, I finally came to the realization that being on earth can be fun too. I knew that even though living life on earth was more limited, I knew we could still exercise a certain amount of free will too, like heaven. I enjoyed building that furnace out of scratch, and I felt like it was like creating something from heaven, even though it took work. That work gave me satisfaction. I learned that certain instances can increase the amount of free will if you have things like money or materials at hand. Even though I was stealing things from the construction site, I felt lucky that I lived there. And I think to a certain point, sometimes when looking back, I think the construction workers knew that and they allowed it. And I think they're really great. And I thank them. At that point, when I was younger, being around my mom, I knew being around my mom could maximize my amount of free will. I liked that idea, but I knew it was normal to not think about such a thing at all times because getting caught up in the moment can sometimes make you forget about the bigger picture. During times when I felt upset, I would often pray to God by repeating a mantra from the chants I used to listen to. Om Namah Shivaya, and sometimes Om Namo Bhagavate Muktanandaya. And this would immediately make me feel better. I, however, would often forget to do that sometimes.